Alright, so we've up to this point we drilled the hole, we got our diameters correct, we have the recesses turned in there. So the last thing to do is to flip, and we're going to work on the detail on the end of the barrel there. So I'll start by placing the stock in there with just about an inch or so sticking out of the chuck jaws. I'm going to need to use my die again and die the end so I can make some precise marks. We'll use, right now I'm just going to put the right hand cutting tool in so I can make my scribe lines like I've done in the past. Use my caliper, and we have three measurements that we want to mark. 0.285, 0.5, and actually 0.65 should be the step that we've already have created there. So we'll just kind of verify that that's in the correct place. First one is 0.285. There we go. And we're going to be working up real close to the chuck here, and we just got to be very careful that nothing's going to collide down here as well. Sometimes even this can collide, so just be very aware of where things are. And if you're ever in doubt, turn that chuck by hand. And really for scribing, you can just turn it by hand and scribe a line in it that way. If there's any question that you might run something into the chuck, never turn that lathe on if you are not sure. Okay, there's the first mark. Next one is 0.5. Okay, there's that scribe, and that step should be the 0.65. So we just want to double check that. Looks like maybe I need to remark that. But it is really close to that step, but I held up just a little bit when I originally did that. Just to make sure that I always have enough material left. Okay, so we got those lines in there now. So what I want to do is kind of cut that tapered in, where we're going to bring it down to a point. So that starts at this line, and we'll bring it down to the center. So to do that, our compound rest, if it's not, again we should be at 30 degrees off of 90. Now there's always some confusion on there because lathes are marked out differently from one brand to another. So according to this, it's actually set on 60 degrees, but it's 30 degrees off of this way. So what I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to place the tool post up front, And I'm going to use the right to left cutting tool, my right hand cutting tool. And it's going to go over like so. And then you will need to rotate your tool post kind of to match the angle of the compound. Would be a good starting point. You may need to adjust it farther later on. And is what we need to be able to do. In a way, we need to hook that cutting tool on the back side of the metal. Again, this is going to be pretty important that the height is dead center. So check that. Alright, so I'm able to hook behind it, and what I'm going to do is use the compound rest and cut from the back side to the front of the lathe. So that means we actually have to turn the lathe on in reverse to make that happen, because the rotation is going to come down on top of the cutter. So I'm going to turn the lathe in reverse. Help if it was in gear. We're going to be on it's set on 400 RPMs. Be a little faster for this. Turn that a little better maybe. We just want to keep light cuts. I'm going to start at the outside corner. I'm just going to chip away at it. It's going to take a bunch of light passes. If you get in too heavy, it's not going to work out too good. Feed this nice and slow and steady. We're getting pretty close here to where it's starting to form the point, and that's going to be the most important thing. We want a nice sharp point there. Formed up to a nice point. So on this, I'm just going to make one final pass, taking a real light cut to try to smooth it out. Just try to feed it real nice and slow and steady. And that's how we do the tapered part there. So now, we're going to set everything back to kind of normal. And we're going to use that same 60-degree cutting tool that we used in previous steps. And that will form that little V groove that goes in between those scribe lines. Use that point to help us gauge the height of our cutting tool. And here we can use, because that should be a 30-degree angle, we can kind of use that to help align our cutter. Or you can use that center gauge again. Anyway, just so that angle is in there perpendicular. Okay, and for this being a forming operation, we want to slow the RPM down, so I'm going to go back down to 275, and I'm going to use some of the tap oil just to help it cut in a little easier. Okay, so I have the two scribe lines, that line there and the line up here, and I'm going to try my best to stay in between those two lines. So I'm just gouging that tool straight in, go in a little bit, and I'm just going to work it to the right and to the left in between those two scribe lines. Gouging it in a little bit, we'll move it right, move it left. What we're trying to accomplish down inside here is get it to a diameter. I got to use the calipers to get in that groove. We want to get it down to a diameter of 0.875 according to our plan. So I was at 895, so I have about 20 thousandths more to go from where I left off. So I'll use my cross-feed dial to measure that. Put a little more oil. So I kind of touch it off to the bottom where I was. Just want to go in another 20 thousandths. Work it right and left in between the two scribe lines. This time I'll leave the tool in there and remeasure. Alright, I went down to 0.866, so a little too far, but still within tolerance. So we'll call that good. Now that there pretty much finishes up the barrel at the lathe for the time being.